Good morning, Perform24 family. Levi Jaeckel here, back with another video. Today is day 13 of Squatober. I'm gonna lift here in 1 second. Today is one of those days where I have like 35 minutes to do 2 hours worth of work. So I'm kind of squeezing everything in today. But here's the game plan. I'm gonna hit my lift right now. The squat portion honestly isn't that bad. Again, it's kind of low volume, low intensity, but then I'm gonna hit a big upper body lift following that. After I lift, I've got a whole bunch of sessions going on here in the gym, and then I've got just a few minutes after everybody's done that I have time to film. What I want to talk about in that second film segment is how the Squatober programming differs from my typical programming. This isn't something that I wanted to do after like 3 or 4 days of Squatober. I wanted to actually get into it and feel it before I like kind of analyzed it and could compare and contrast. But I feel like I've got a pretty good feel for it now, and so that is why I've waited until now to make that video. I think there's some good insight. You know, obviously, I said in the very first video, in day 0, I said like one of the biggest things that I'm looking forward to is learning. And I'm definitely getting learned up. But enough chit chat. We don't have time. We gotta get to squatting. Day 13, come on. Boom. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. That's what we needed. Good way to start the day. That was 5 sets, 23 reps in just about 18 minutes. That's efficiency, that's execution. Also, a quick little bonus tip. When I'm really busy and I've got a lot of stuff in my head, big sticky note guy, big sticky note guy. Perform24 family, it is now the afternoon and training is done. And we get to talk a little bit about programming. This is gonna end up being part 1 of 2. I'm either gonna film the second part on tomorrow or I'm gonna film it on Thursday and it'll post on Friday. But either way, sometime in the next couple days, you're gonna have part 2. Okay, so we're gonna spend a little bit of time talking about how the Squatober program is different than the typical Perform24 programming. As we've talked about a couple times in these videos, the Squatober program is a squat specific program. Not only is it squat specific, but it's even more detailed than that. It is a max strength squat specific program. All of these sessions, day after day for the entire month, is leading up to a brand new 1RM at the end of the month. This year, October 30th falls on a Friday, so in 2.5 weeks, I'm gonna be attempting a new PR. Based on the way things are going right now, I have a feeling I'm gonna smash my current PR of 300. All right, so now I need to tell you that I haven't talked to the coach that wrote this program. I haven't even attempted to talk to him. I don't really want to know what's going on inside of his brain, but just observing kind of what his thought process is behind programming some of these lifts. I've got a couple points that I'd like to share. One, he doesn't superset the barbell back squat with anything. Typically that time is just used for rest. Again, that makes sense. This is a squat specific program. That's all we care about. We don't want to superset something with the squat that is going to fatigue you in a way that would take away from the squat. Keep the goal the goal. The squat is the goal. Second, there's not a whole bunch of other lower body movements in any part of the lift, whether it's at the end or anything like that, that includes lower body strength. Again, totally makes sense, right? We don't want to squat and then later deadlift and be super sore and have a terrible squat day, because we could use every single ounce of energy that we have in our lower body needs to be optimized for this barbell back squat. There's not a whole lot of room to expend energy on anything else, which again is why probably my Sunday run wasn't the best idea. Last Friday when Nick was training with me and we sat down and we kind of talked about the program, he said that there wasn't a whole lot of core involved in this program, right? So far there hasn't been a single core exercise programmed in our lifts. However, I will say this, our upper body lifts, and we have had some pretty intense upper body lifts following the squat segment of the day, but our upper body lifts include a lot of pull-ups. Now, for me, pull-ups are extremely demanding on my core. So the day after I do a lot of pull-ups, obviously my lats are sore, and then usually my core is just as sore. Okay, so now let's talk about the Perform24 training model. So our training model is the thing I think that makes us a little bit unique than other training businesses. We have a single training model that every single one of our clients follows. It doesn't matter if it's a pro athlete, it doesn't matter if it's my wife, it doesn't matter if it's one of these business executives that I work with every week. Every client, when they're training with me, with Perform24, follows the exact same structure for their session. And that structure is as follows. We always start with a warm-up. Usually this is some type of mobility or maybe corrective, like a little physical therapy-ish type of movement. So some type of mobility. Then we go into some type of plyometric exercise, and this can be as simple or as demanding as we want it to be. We follow that up with a primary strength block, and this is kind of like the big movement of the day. Okay, so what is our big emphasis for the day? After the primary block, we go into a core block, okay, and that's where we address all of our core movements. We follow that with an auxiliary block. The auxiliary block is a kind of like a baby version of the primary block. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit less demanding. The final piece to our programming is typically conditioning. So we finish the session with a bang, kind of a cherry on top, send you on your way. So I live in a pretty structured world. My programs follow the same sequence every single time. How we manipulate that sequence is endless, and that's some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about in part 2. But as far as how we start a session and then how we flow through the session and how we end the session, that almost never changes. Another thing that we think about, like my roots are in athletic performance, and I kind of came up in the strength and conditioning world thinking about athletics. So function and health and injury resistance, those are big themes that I constantly think about when I'm programming for my clients. And it doesn't matter if I am programming for an athlete or if I'm just programming for a regular adult. I always kind of think about like, how am I going to build like the most comprehensive human body that I can? So because of that, we don't usually play in the extremes. Squatober is an extreme program. We are way in the deep end of optimizing the barbell back squat. That's not something that I do very often, hardly ever. Another big difference between Squatober and Perform24 programming is that typically I will program in circuits. Sometimes I'll use 2 exercises and just kind of go back and forth between those 2 in a superset, but typically I will program sets of 3 exercises or sometimes even sets of 4 exercises. Those exercises are usually sequenced around like the same muscle groups or the same global movements, but I rarely will do a single exercise just by itself, rest, and come back to that exercise. And that is a consistent theme with the squatting that I've been doing. I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking like, well, okay, explain a little bit more. Explain what's in those circuits. I promise that's coming. That's going to be in part 2. But right now we're just talking about the global structure of the sessions itself. And then finally, I would say that the duration of the training session is a big difference. My typical training sessions will last very consistently between like 55 and 65 minutes. Regardless of the intensity or the volume, usually that time frame is pretty accurate. Squatober's kind of been all over the place. Like some of my lifts are taking like 35 minutes long, which is awesome. And then some of them are taking like an hour and a half. Those heavy squat days are just wrecking me. I can't recover fast enough. So overall, I don't feel like I'm neglecting anything by training the way that I have been the last couple weeks. I honestly even think that like the upper body volume has been totally adequate. Obviously we're way on the extreme end of the spectrum with our lower body volume, but that's what we signed up for. That's why we're here. I said from the beginning, I'm trying to get a bigger squat. That's what I'm here for. Let's see what you got. So far, kind of thinking about these differences and then also like trying to be aware of what I'm learning and what I'm seeing that I might not have expected. And this isn't something that I'm learning for the first time, but this is reinforcing a core belief that I have, is that the human body is stupid resilient, crazy resilient. We way underestimate what the human body is capable of. Back squatting every single day is not putting me into a hole like I thought it would. I actually feel overall much better than I expected to feel, and that's just because I underestimated my own capability. In the performance world, we tend to be like a little careful sometimes and like worry about overtraining and emphasize recovery and all that stuff. It's always important. It's always important. But you can push a lot harder than you think you can. All right, I'm wrapping this up here. I got a few more things to go do before I shut it down for the day. I will catch you tomorrow for day 14. Almost halfway through, but day 14 of Squatober. Hope you guys are well. See you then.